What is up, everyone? This is Matt Parrino from NYup and Syracuse.com coming to you on this Friday. The off-season is in full force here for the Buffalo Bills, but I thought, hey, maybe we should maybe catch up on Facebook Live every Friday or so, go through the week's news, talk about some of the things going on around the team. We put out on NYup.com this week a story of the top 50 free agents that are potential fits for the Bills as we're now creeping up on the 2-month countdown here to the start of free agency. But the big news right now, and of course, is the live chat you're watching on Facebook Live. This will appear on YouTube as well. Leave your questions, comments, concerns, and we'll talk about all of them. But the big news right now happening in the world of the NFL is the Antonio Brown saga that's going on in Pittsburgh. And, you know, we've talked about it all week. I've seen some of the, Bills Mafia reaction to the potential of the Buffalo Bills going after Antonio Brown via trade. And I wanted to, come on here and talk about it with you guys a little bit. It's a very exciting prospect when you talk about getting a guy of Antonio Brown's talent into the fold for an offense for the Buffalo Bills that, let's be honest, at times this season wasn't very good. I mean, we're talking about the 30th ranked overall offense in the league, 31st ranked passing offense, 30 or 31st. Jacksonville might have fallen beneath with Blake Bortles and company. But, this is, an option if it's on the table that I think the Bills should definitely pursue. I put together an article that's going to come out with this video after we're done to talking about all of the different points of this discussion that are coming up. So Antonio Brown, the first thing, for those that don't know, Antonio Brown, 4-time All-Pro, first-team All-Pro wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, benched the final game of the season. Had what appears to be a dust-up with Ben Roethlisberger and some tempers flaring between the two of them. A rift formed this season between the two of them. A lot of success there in Pittsburgh with these two guys. So it's kind of, from a fan's perspective, I'm sure if you're a Steelers fan, it's not something that you like. You have such a high-powered offense out there. But obviously a rift there. Obviously things aren't going well there. And Antonio Brown was benched for the final game. After the season, Mike Tomlin came out and basically said that he quit on the team. This week, the owner, Art Rooney II, came out and said that it's hard to envision Antonio Brown being on the team next season. So, obviously that's where we're at. Nothing has been rumored. Brandon Beane hasn't been rumored to be talking to the Pittsburgh Steelers at all. But the discussion is, should this be something that he should pursue? If you're a Bills fan, do you want him to go after an Antonio Brown, a guy that put up 15 touchdowns this season, another 1,000 yards season, a sixth straight? This is a guy that just produces at the highest level in this league. And, there's this narrative out there right now that he wouldn't be a process guy, right? That he would be somebody that you bring into the locker room that wouldn't mesh with the rest of this team. And I don't know if that's so much necessarily the case. I mean, if you look at this situation, tempers are flaring, like I said. I think that the responsibility for this goes as much on Ben Roethlisberger's shoulders as it should go on Antonio Brown. You go back a few weeks back. Mike Burns says, why would you want a player who basically, quit on his team? I'll rephrase a little bit. I'm getting to that. I think that, there are reasons for it. There are reasons why things happen. I think that in the NFL, one of the big talking points is culture, right? Building a culture within your team. No other team in the 4 major sports, you are dealing with 53 guys, and on a week-to-week basis. At the beginning of camp, you got upwards of 90 guys in the roster. You're dealing with a lot of personalities, a lot of people. I'll get to that in a moment, Mike, because I do like your point. You have to build a culture where people are accountable, people are playing for each other, and I don't know if that's necessarily going on there. Like I said, a few weeks back, Ben Roethlisberger did a radio interview where he basically threw Antonio Brown under the bus. You could say that it was constructive criticism. Antonio Brown didn't seem to take an issue with it. But when you have players out in public, calling out other players, I just don't think it's a good look, and I think it's an indication of what was going on inside that locker room. You talk about, I never want an I player, you want a we player. Well, let's break that down a little bit. First of all, everybody's a little bit I, you know what I mean? Everybody's concerned with their own production. I think that's part of what makes great players great, and I think that a guy like Antonio Brown, if he didn't have that kind of mentality to go and get his, I don't know if the production would be there at the level that it's been at. But I do agree. You want guys that are going to play with them, and that goes to my next point. I think that anybody can become a process guy. You talk about a LaShawn McCoy is a perfect example, a guy that has had some dust-ups over the course of his career as a guy maybe thought of as a prima donna. Even this year, late in the season, being interviewed here by a bunch of guys and talking about if he's going to be the featured back, if rookie Keith Ford could get thrown in, maybe get some carries down the stretch. He scoffed at the idea. Sean McDermott sat him to start the game that Sunday, kept him right in line, and LaShawn McCoy came out after the fact and said, listen, I got to be accountable. I'm a team captain. Sean McDermott put me in my place. LaShawn McCoy can be considered a prima donna, me type of players. He's concerned about his numbers. Even right now, he's chasing 12,000 yards. He's a guy that cares about his own, getting his. But that doesn't change the fact that there have been times this year when he has been a guy that has been a process guy, somebody that has gone out there and put himself on the line to defend a Josh Allen, to rave about the rookie quarterback who was basically getting, kind of beat up nationally for some of his throws, especially back in training camp. When Charles Clay dropped that ball against the Miami Dolphins, LaShawn McCoy was the first guy to step up and say, listen, that's not Charles Clay's fault. We lost this game as a team. And that's what you want. You want your leaders to step up in those moments, and LaShawn McCoy has done that at times. And I think that it's about trusting Sean McDermott and trusting the process, for lack of a better term. When Antonio Brown gets into the fold, you learn how this operation runs in Buffalo. For guys that can't figure it out, the guys that don't kind of buy in and do the things that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane want them to do, they tend to be, kicked out of town. And I think that to scoff at the idea of Antonio Brown and the potential of the production that he brings to the table, because you don't think that he's a fit in the locker room, I think that there are extenuating circumstances here, and I think that we'll learn more as this situation plays out. We haven't really heard from Antonio Brown other than a few social media posts, so I'd be very interested to hear the entire story, what really happened there from Antonio Brown's point of view as well. But I do think that culture is important in football. I've learned that. This is my first year on the beat, and I've really seen that up close and personal, how important it is. Down the stretch, the Bills out of the playoffs for weeks and weeks at a time, and Sean McDermott continually getting this locker room of guys leaning on his leaders to get everybody up to play. That's impressive stuff, and it really lends itself to that whole argument that culture matters in this league. Bob Krause says he believes everything stems from Roethlisberger, and I do agree. I think to a degree. I think if you're the quarterback, you gotta stand up for your guys. That's something that I've been impressed with as from Josh Allen over the course of his rookie season. The development he's made, not only throwing the ball and running the ball, but also as a leader. You really can't do that, especially if you know that Antonio Brown is a sensitive guy, somebody that is very prideful about what he's doing. To call him out in front of teammates, or to even question his ability on a radio show like came out, I don't think it's a good play, and I don't think that's what you want your starting quarterback to do. And I think that's on the coach to make sure that he knows that. And I think that Sean McDermott is a guy that has proven that he is able to run a very tight ship. He's able to maintain a culture. I know it's cliche around Buffalo, this whole process business, but there's something to it, I believe. Let me just check. Despite the record the Steelers had this year, missed the playoffs, would he even want to come to a team that's not quite a playoff or even Super Bowl contending team? I think he'll go somewhere where he can grab another ring. Buffalo still has a decent amount of rebuilding to go. That's a good point. Josh Franz brings that up, and but I think that in this situation, it's not a free agent situation. I think it's he's going to end up going where to the highest bidder, and that's a whole other part of this discussion. What do you have to give up to get an Antonio Brown. It could be a significant price tag here to get Antonio Brown, a guy that has gone to multiple Pro Bowls, has been an All-Pro player, is putting up crazy numbers even at 30 years old. You're talking about the cap hit. He will cost you $22 million on the cap next season. That's a lot. But the Bills have a lot to spend this year. They have $90 million almost in cap space. If they move on from Charles Clay, they could add another $4.5 million. LaShawn McCoy could be a casualty as well. You'd save $6.5 million if you were to move on from him. So there's a lot of dollars at Brandon Beane's disposal. And when you talk about the 30th ranked pass offense, like we talked about earlier, getting Antonio Brown into the fold completely changes the complexion of this offense and completely opens up so many new doors for offensive coordinator Brian Daboll and Josh Allen, and could potentially unlock this running game a bit. We've talked so much about the struggles of this offensive line all season, but let's be honest, this passing game was not a feared unit all season long. I mean, people weren't afraid of Josh Allen in this passing game coming into your stadium or even at New Era Field and putting up a 300, 400 yard passing game. So I think that had its effect on the offense. So yeah, I think that there's so much to talk about when it comes to this type of scenario when there's question marks around a player's character, and he hasn't really come out and debunked any of this yet. Antonio Brown's been pretty much radio silent aside from a few social media posts, but it's intriguing. It's fun stuff, right? This is what this time of the year is about. I think if Antonio Brown is a Buffalo Bill tomorrow, whatever you think about all of this, whether you think it's they shouldn't go out and get him, whether you question if he's the type of character guy that would fit into this room, whether you think the cost is worth it, whether it be from what it will cost to get Antonio Brown, from what you'd have to give up in trade picks and et cetera players, and also the cap hit that he'll cost. It's fun. I mean, you turn the page tomorrow and Antonio Brown's on your roster, and I think that that completely changes the complexion of 2019. I know that there's 10 draft picks, and we're going to spend a bunch of time over the course of the next few months talking about free agency, the draft, 10 picks in the draft, and other different things that the Bills can do to shore up this roster for 2019. But I think that Antonio Brown is absolutely game-changing player that, the Bills were lacking. I think I put a stat in this article that's going to go out. If you take Zay Jones' production, who was the Bills' leading receiver this season, and Zay Jones had a nice year. He really bounced back nicely from a freshman, a rookie season slump. He put up 650 yards, 7 touchdowns. If you double his stats on the season, you would get roughly Antonio Brown's season from 2018. So we're just talking about the type of player that the Bills don't currently have on this roster. Turning the page a little bit, we also put out this week the top 50 free agents fits for the Buffalo Bills. Now, when you're looking at this article, remember, this isn't the top 50 free agents that are on the market. This is, 50 players that are going to be a free agent, whether they're mostly unrestricted, but some restricted as well, that potentially could be fits, right? And there was a few that I wanted to touch on really quick. Obviously, the first one, Le'Veon Bell, also a Pittsburgh Steeler. I think that's something he has the choice, and like somebody mentioned earlier, I don't necessarily think that Buffalo is going to be on the top of his list of teams. He's noted on social media that Indianapolis could be the place that he wants to go. But another game-changing player that, there's a lot to assess and evaluate when you're talking about LaShawn McCoy, going to be 31 years old next season. Huge dip in production in 2018. You have to ask yourself the question, is that who we want, if you're Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, as our running back number 1 next season? By all accounts, Brandon Beane came out, Sean McDermott threw their full support behind LaShawn McCoy. But I think if you look at this free agent class, my point is you add a Le'Veon Bell, an Antonio Brown, the complexion of your offense immediately changes. So is he the number 1 fit? Of course he is. Le'Veon Bell is a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro. When healthy, when active, arguably the best running back in the NFL, if not the best. If you want to say Todd Gurley maybe, he's 1B. So I think that he's that number 1 fit. There's a couple centers on this list that I put out there. Matt Paradis, coming off a injury in Denver, thought of as, one of the best centers in the league, but also in Kansas City if he hits the free agent market. Mitch Morris having himself quite the year. Patrick Mahomes and that Kansas City offense has had a lot of success. Mitch Morris has gotten a ton of credit for what he's been able to do. Those are definitely some names to watch. Tackle from Carolina, Darrell Williams. Obviously, that connection to Brandon Beane. I'm not so sure that there's a lot of big-time wide receivers in this free agent group. There's a bunch of players that are kind of in that middle tier. But there are a few options when you look at it. Golden Tate last week for the Philadelphia Eagles. Big play in prime time and crunch time. That touchdown from Nick Foles late. He's going to be a free agent. Probably going to cost you some money. But a guy, probably at that, two tiers down from an Antonio Brown. But a guy that's been in this league, been in a few teams, can bring some experience to the room. At tight end, Jared Cook, coming off of a very strong season with the Oakland Raiders. 68 catches, 896 yards, 6 touchdowns from the tight end position. I have him ranked at number 4. At 3 is Golden Tate. And then at 5, another guard, Roger Saffold from the Los Angeles Rams. You'll get to see him and that Rams team play this weekend in the divisional round of the playoffs. He's been a big part of the success of that offense, not only the offense, but the running game and Todd Gurley and the way that he, you talk about the Bills trying to get this run game charged up. Adding in a guy like Saffold would really go a long way to improve things there. But go over to NYup.com right now, hit the Buffalo Bills tab, and you can check out our top 50 fits. Free agent fits for the Bills. We'll have much more content and discussion of all of this Antonio Brown news as the offseason progresses here. But for right now, Matt Parrino, NYup, Syracuse.com. Enjoy what's left of the football season, and we'll run this back next week. Thank you so much for joining and participating.